Have you ever found yourself magnetically pulled toward someone who later turned your life upside down? Someone who seemed absolutely perfect at first, but slowly revealed themselves to be completely self-absorbed. You're not alone, and no, you're not crazy. There's actually a psychological reason why so many of us fall into this trap, and understanding it might just save you from your next toxic relationship. Let's be honest here. We've all met that person. The one who walks into a room and everyone turns to look. They're confident, charismatic, they tell amazing stories about their achievements, and they make you feel like you're the most special person in the world when they focus their attention on you, at least at first. Then things start to shift. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the relationship becomes all about them. Your needs don't matter anymore. Your feelings are dismissed. And somehow, you're left wondering how you got here and why you can't seem to walk away. So why does this keep happening? Why are we drawn to narcissists like moths to a flame? The answer is more complex than you might think, and it has everything to do with how our brains are wired, what we learned in childhood, and some pretty clever manipulation tactics that narcissists have perfected. First, let's talk about the initial attraction. Narcissists are often incredibly charming. This isn't an accident. They've spent their entire lives perfecting a facade, a mask that presents them as confident, successful, and desirable. When you first meet a narcissist, you're not meeting the real person. You're meeting a carefully constructed character designed to draw you in. They're like actors on a stage, and they've rehearsed their lines 1,000 times. This initial phase is often referred to as love bombing, and it can be intoxicating. The narcissist showers you with attention, compliments, gifts, and affection. They text you constantly. They want to see you all the time. They tell you you're unlike anyone they've ever met. They might even talk about a future together surprisingly quickly. Your brain is flooded with feel-good chemicals such as dopamine and oxytocin. You feel seen, valued, and incredibly special. Who wouldn't be attracted to that? But here's the thing. This intensity isn't love, it's a strategy. Narcissists need something called narcissistic supply. This is basically attention, admiration, and validation from others. They need it as much as we need air. And in the beginning, they're willing to invest heavily to secure you as a reliable source of that supply. They're studying you, learning what makes you tick, what your vulnerabilities are, what you desperately want to hear. And they're using all of that information to create an irresistible illusion. Now you might be thinking, okay, but I'm not stupid. Why couldn't I see through this? And that's where things get really interesting, because our attraction to narcissists often has roots in our own psychology and past experiences. Many people who end up in relationships with narcissists grew up in environments where love was conditional. Maybe you had a parent who was emotionally unavailable, critical, or inconsistent with their affection. As a child, you learned that you had to work for love, that you had to be perfect or achieve certain things to be worthy of attention and care. This creates a blueprint in your brain. It becomes familiar. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Our brains are drawn to what's familiar, even when what's familiar is unhealthy. When a narcissist comes along with their pattern of intermittent reinforcement, giving you intense attention one moment and withdrawing it the next, it triggers something deep inside you. It feels like home. Your brain recognizes this pattern, and unconsciously you might think, if I try harder, if I'm just good enough, I can win their consistent love. It's the same game you played as a child, and some part of you still believes you can win it this time. There's also something called trauma bonding that keeps people attached to narcissists. This happens when you experience a cycle of abuse followed by positive reinforcement. The narcissist hurts you, then lovingly apologizes or briefly returns to that wonderful person they were in the beginning. This creates a firm psychological bond, similar to what happens in hostage situations. Your brain becomes addicted to the relief you feel when the good version of them returns. You start walking on eggshells, constantly trying to bring back that version of them, and that effort itself deepens your attachment. Let's talk about empathy for a moment, as it is crucial. If you're an empathetic person, and many people who attract narcissists are, you're particularly vulnerable. Compassionate people have a natural tendency to see the good in others, to make excuses for bad behavior, and to believe people can change. When a narcissist tells you about their difficult childhood or their past hurts, your empathy kicks in. You think they're acting this way because they're wounded. I can help them heal. I can love them enough to change them. But here's what you need to understand. Narcissists are attracted to empathetic people specifically because they're easy to manipulate. They know you'll give them chance after chance. They know you'll absorb their projections and blame. They know you'll prioritize their feelings over your own. Your greatest strength becomes your greatest vulnerability in their hands. There's also a cultural component we can't ignore. We live in a society that often celebrates narcissistic traits. Confidence, ambition, and self-promotion are generally regarded as positive qualities, especially in professional settings. We're told to admire people who are self-assured and unapologetic. Social media has amplified this 1,000 times over. We see curated lives, perfectly filtered photos, people presenting themselves as more successful, more attractive, more interesting than they really are. In many ways, our culture is training us to be drawn to narcissistic presentations. And narcissists are experts at presenting themselves as high-value partners. They often position themselves as successful, well-connected, or special in some way. They might name-drop, exaggerate their achievements, or present themselves as victims of others' jealousy. This taps into our natural attraction to status and resources. From an evolutionary perspective, we're wired to be attracted to partners who seem capable and successful because, historically, that meant better survival for us and our offspring. Narcissists exploit this instinct ruthlessly. Another factor is what psychologists refer to as cognitive dissonance. Once you've invested time, emotion, and energy into a relationship with a narcissist, your brain doesn't want to accept that it was all a waste. It's painful to admit we were fooled or manipulated. So instead, your brain works overtime to rationalize the relationship. You tell yourself stories. They're just stressed right now. They don't really mean it when they're cruel. Everyone has flaws. I'm not perfect either. This cognitive dissonance keeps you stuck, trying to make sense of a relationship that fundamentally doesn't make sense. Let's also address the aftermath of devaluation. After the love bombing phase, narcissists typically enter what's called the devaluation phase. This is when they start criticizing you, withdrawing affection, comparing you to others, or outright abusing you emotionally or psychologically. But here's the twist. This devaluation actually makes some people more attached, not less. Why? Now you're desperately trying to return to that initial phase. You're thinking, what did I do wrong? How can I fix this? If I can just be better, they'll love me like they did in the beginning. This creates a cycle that's incredibly difficult to break. You're essentially addicted to the highs, and you'll endure longer and longer lows, hoping to get back there. It's not unlike a gambling addiction. The intermittent rewards keep you hooked, always chasing that next win, that next moment of genuine connection or affection. Now, I want to clarify something. Being drawn to a narcissist doesn't mean you're weak or damaged or broken. It means you're human. Narcissists are skilled manipulators who have spent their entire lives perfecting their tactics. They didn't stumble into these behaviors. These are sophisticated psychological strategies that work on many people. The shame isn't in falling for it. The shame, if there is any, belongs entirely to the person doing the manipulating. But there is something you can do with this knowledge. You can start recognizing the patterns. You can start asking yourself hard questions. Why am I attracted to people who seem perfect at first but turn out to be unavailable? Why do I feel like I have to earn love? Why am I more comfortable with chaos and intensity than with steady, reliable affection? These questions may not be enjoyable to ask, but they're necessary if you want to break the cycle. One of the biggest red flags for narcissism is how someone treats other people, not just you. In the beginning, you're the exception, you're special. However, please pay attention to how they discuss exes, family members, coworkers, and service staff. Are they always the victim? Is everyone else always the problem? Do they lack empathy for others? Do they never take responsibility for anything? These are warning signs. Also, watch for moving too fast. If someone talks about soulmates and forever after just 2 weeks, that's not romantic. That's a red flag. Healthy relationships develop gradually. There's time to build trust, to see how someone handles conflict, to observe their character in different situations. Narcissists rush the process specifically to bypass your rational thinking and lock you in before you see who they really are. Listen to your gut. I know this sounds simple, but how many times have you ignored that little voice telling you something was off? How many times did you rationalize away your discomfort? Your intuition is picking up on things your conscious mind hasn't fully processed yet. If something feels wrong, it probably is. You don't need to have evidence. You don't need to prove your case. You're allowed to walk away simply because something doesn't feel right. And here's something crucial. If you find yourself constantly explaining away someone's behavior to your friends and family, that's a massive red flag. If you're defending them more than you're enjoying them, something is deeply wrong. Healthy relationships don't require constant defense or explanation. They add to your life. They don't drain you. Recovery from a relationship with a narcissist is real work. It's not just about getting over a breakup. It's about understanding why you were vulnerable to this dynamic in the first place. It often requires therapy, genuine self-reflection, and a willingness to change your own patterns of behavior. You might need to grieve not just the relationship, but the version of yourself that accepted treatment you didn't deserve. You may need to establish better boundaries, work on improving your self-esteem, or heal childhood wounds. The good news is that once you truly understand these dynamics, you can't unsee them. You start recognizing narcissistic behavior immediately. That charm offensive that once would have swept you off your feet. Now you see it for what it is. That sob story about how everyone has wronged them. Now you hear the lack of accountability, that intensity and rush. Now you recognize it as a warning, not a feature. You also start valuing different things in relationships. Instead of charisma and excitement, you begin to appreciate consistency and kindness. Instead of grand gestures, you value daily respect. Instead of someone who makes you feel special, you seek someone who makes you feel safe. This shift in values is everything. It's the difference between repeating the cycle and finally breaking free. Here's what I'd like you to consider. Have you ever been involved with someone who showed these narcissistic patterns? Looking back now, can you see the red flags you missed at the time? More importantly, what did that relationship teach you about yourself and what you truly need from a partner? Understanding why we're drawn to narcissists isn't about self-blame. It's about self-awareness. It's about recognizing that you deserve relationships where you don't have to work constantly for scraps of affection. You deserve someone who truly sees you and values what they see. You deserve consistency, respect, and genuine love. Not the performance of love, but the real thing. And the first step toward having that is understanding why you've accepted less in the past. You're not broken for having been attracted to a narcissist, but you do have the power to choose differently moving forward. And that power starts with knowledge, with understanding these dynamics, and with deciding that you're worth more than being someone's source of supply. You're worth being someone's genuine partner, their equal, their friend, and their lover, not their audience or their emotional support system. If this video resonated with you, if you've been there or you're there right now, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Understanding psychology and these patterns can literally change your life. The more we discuss this openly, the more people we can help break free from these destructive cycles. You're not alone in this, not even close. And awareness is always the first step toward change.